I know like in Islam, they're not allowed to show their figure. Okay, from my understanding. Now South Park did that. Okay, they might be in for a conflict of the ages. Okay.
I will only briefly mention this one as it functions as a precursor to an episode coming up, but the episode planned on showing the Muslim prophet Muhammad as a
It's almost like, okay, I have officially dived into the South Park lore as somebody who has never watched South Park. I seen my first South Park video, which was the one about Scientology. Okay. And I said I wanted to watch a video about all the controversies that they had. So that's what I'm about to watch. I might even pick up South Park and watch it. I'm not going to lie, but we're back with Bloom's channel. So make sure y'all head over there. I will link the original video down below. Head to that channel, support the vids. But let's get into these South Park controversies.
Well, it's because that's all I could afford when I had this commissioned, but that is irrelevant now. Today we will be having a pop quiz. Now, what is the most controversial TV show of all time?
It's gotta be South Park, right? Is there another one? Simpsons, maybe?
Okay, time's up. If you said anything other than South Park, you not only fail, but you are expelled from this university and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Now, for those of you that are still here, a follow-up question. Why is South Park so controversial? The correct answer is consistency. Allow me to explain. There has existed many controversial shows
Beavis and
since
Butthead
television was first invented. And sure, there may have been some obscure shows so offensive that they were canceled after a season, but...
Hell, honey, I'm home. What were they putting on TV? This is nuts.
There has never been a show that has managed to become involved in major controversy as consistently as South Park. They have managed to stay controversial for 25 years at this point, and thanks to an absolutely absurd deal struck with the creators and Viacom, they don't plan on slowing down anytime soon. Speaking of that, Viacom, I see that you have lots of money considering you're able to pay these guys almost $1 billion, so I would really much appreciate it if you stop trying to take my videos down. I work really hard on them, and I love your show, and so pretty please be kinder to me. Thank you. What were we talking about? Oh yeah, South Park. Because of everything I just explained, I thought it would be fun to go back and chronicle every major South Park controversy I could find and explain it to the best of my abilities. And a quick side note, I know this isn't a super original idea. I mean, Watch Mojo has done a top 10 list on the controversies. Okay. And they've also done a top 20 list. And the top 20 list is literally just 10 extra controversies before it gets to number 10, where they just copy and pasted the original top 10 with no acknowledgement.
W monetization.
Okay, well, now I don't feel as bad about doing a similar video. So, with the intro out of the way, let's get into it. Every South Park controversy explained. So, knowing the content of this video, there's a pretty good chance that it will get demonetized. So, to try to combat that, I want to give a shout out to today's sponsor, Raid Shadow Legends. Raid Shadow Legends just celebrated their 3rd anniversary as one of the top RPG games out there.
I feel like everybody has seen like the Raid Shadow Legends thing. I'm sorry.
To this day, South Park will still find itself in the occasional controversy. However, the public response to the show today is practically non-existent when compared with how it was received when it was first aired. In 1997, the social landscape of the US was very different to how it is today. Vulgarity on television was practically non-existent at the time, so to put it in perspective, when The Simpsons aired in 1989, it was considered by many to be crude and offensive. Now you could only imagine how those same people reacted when South Park aired and made The Simpsons look about as crude as Full House.
You got it, dude.
To go from clean, sanitized, inoffensive sitcoms dominating popular television to a cartoon made for adults that is quite possibly one of the most vulgar pieces of media ever made, I mean, you're going 0 to 100 in record time here. Unsurprisingly, a lot of people did not like the content of the show. The existence of this vulgarity was bad enough to the general public, but what really sealed the deal was the fact that the main characters saying and doing these things were young children. It also didn't help that adult cartoons were very uncommon at the time, so a non-observant parent may see their children watching the show and think they're watching a kid's show while they're really watching the most adult show on television. Reportedly, when screening the pilot episode to test audiences, 3 people burst into tears over the show's content. The backlash was immense, including everything from campaigns to get the show taken off the
Hold
air.
up, burst into tears like laughing, or burst into tears like crying it was too offensive? Because if that's the case, oh my Jesus, what kind of world?
To schools banning South Park clothing entirely. It's pretty funny looking back, since this early South Park is incredibly tame in comparison to what the show would become, and of course, that only brought with it more controversy.
Bigger, longer, uncut. Sounds like me. Hold on. Whoa. I'm bigger, longer, cut. Okay, terrible joke.
Despite its controversial existence, the show didn't experience much major controversy related to specific themes outside of the vulgarity for the first 3 seasons. That is, until South Park Bigger, Longer, and Uncut was released in 1999. Creating a movie meant Matt and Trey were not limited to the rules they had to follow creating a television show, as they were always dancing on the line of what was allowed to be shown on television and what wasn't. Because of this, they sprinted straight for the line of what was allowed to be shown in movies and set up camp there. In the production of the movie alone, the team had tons of issues with the MPAA and Paramount, who attempted to censor or block content so many times that this video would be an hour longer if I talked about all of them. So here are just a few of my favorites. The original name for the movie was South Park All Hell Breaks Loose, but the MPAA would not approve this name because it had the word hell in it, so Trey came up with Bigger, Longer, and Uncut, and it was approved. Only later did the MPAA realize what the name actually meant, and they attempted to block this title, but they were prevented from doing so. When writing the script for the movie, Matt and Trey were made aware that at the time, the MPAA required any movie with 400 or more swear words to be rated NC-17. They couldn't have their movie rated NC-17 due to their agreement with Paramount, so can you guess how many swear words they included
399. These boys are cooking
in the movie? Yeah, it was 399. Now, the public's reaction to the movie was basically what you would expect if you released a significantly longer and more offensive episode of South Park. People called for it to be banned, it was banned in a bunch of countries, people thought it marked the end of Western civilization as we know it, yada yada yada, you get the picture. Ironically, the backlash to the movie mirrored the predictions made in the movie itself, minus the whole war starting and everything. But the creation of this movie is what made Matt and Trey want to push the boundaries even further, and it marked the beginning of a major change in the tone of the show moving forward. In the eyes of the public, it was no longer just a crude and inappropriate show, it was an attack on the beliefs of everyone. Season 4 is where we first begin to see the signs that this show may be more than just crass humor, and recognize the potential for controversy with a few minor ones throughout the season. Episode 5, Cartman Joins NAMBLA, was banned from airing on the British satellite channel Sky One, as it contained many references to the actions of the group NAMBLA, which is somehow a real-life group and whose actions I will not detail here. Later in the season, we get one of our first glimpses at how well the show can handle contentious issues with Chef Goes Nanners, which discusses the implications of continuing to use a flag that was used in times of racism. The message was way ahead of its time, and while today the episode has aged like fine wine, when it was released there was they parodied the fear-mongering and money-focused ideals that some Christian churches are known for. Unsurprisingly, this episode garnered a bit of controversy, as poking fun at Christianity in a predominantly Christian nation in the early 2000s generally would. However, this was the last of any sort of controversy for Season 4, and we made it through with only a few small incidents, so surely they wouldn't do something in the premiere of Season 5 that would be such a big deal it would literally change television forever. Right? Initially, the creators only wanted to say it a few times, but Comedy Central refused, so they came up with the idea to say the word as many times as possible so that it lost all and any meaning, and it was meant to show that it's just a word and it has no real power. They mostly succeeded in this since the episode itself didn't receive all that much backlash, relatively speaking.
Wow.
Supposedly, Comedy Central received nearly 5,000 email complaints from different organizations and people, but besides that, there were no large-scale...
Hold up, it's Comedy Central, though. Why is a kid organization hitting up Comedy Central? That's where they tell jokes where people, places, and things are the butt of the joke. Should your kid be watching that anyway? Come on now.
Protests or news stories covering the episode. This episode was surprisingly important to television as a whole, since it basically paved the way for this type of language to exist on television. And whether you think that's a good thing or a bad thing, it undoubtedly changed the television landscape forever. A clever satire of sex education and the age at which it's taught that is portrayed through extremely graphic depictions of some pretty disturbing things. The real controversy here was in the broadcasting. In Australia, the episode aired later than its usual time slot, and once again, the British channel Sky One outright refused to air the episode. In America, the Parents Television Council went as far as to cite the episode as an example of how the show is quote-unquote dangerous to democracy. If anyone can explain how exactly a cartoon about sex ed is dangerous to democracy, go ahead and explain in the comments down below. Since then, all repeats and DVD versions included edited scenes, particularly one with Mr. Garrison teaching the kindergartners how to perform the old rubber mouth technique. Comedy Central didn't even want to air the scene in the first place, but it did for the initial screening and then never again.
What is the rubber mouth technique, bruh? When my kids grow up, they're watching freaking In a Nutshell, Oversimplified, Tear Zoo. What other channels is my kids watching, man? Listen, they not watching none of this. Okay, they're cooked.
Episode first aired, it was considered very controversial. And no, it's not because it focuses on Jared from Subway. All of his controversies wouldn't come out until years later. Rather, the episode makes countless references and jokes to the AIDS virus. And while it wouldn't be very controversial to do this today, in the early 2000s, it definitely was.
True.
The ending also includes Butters being beaten by his parents, and this combo of content meant that the episode was banned from airing on Comedy Central for years after it was released, though it was eventually allowed to air again. In an ironic twist, the day Jared accepted a plea deal for his crimes, Comedy Central aired the episode back-to-back nearly all day, and it really showcased how poorly some of the lines have aged.
I'm gonna seek out all the underprivileged and hungry children of the world, and I'm going to give them AIDS myself.
You're gonna give children AIDS?
That's a crazy
line.
line.
This one is less of a backlash from the public as it is backlash from one individual, that individual being Jennifer Lopez. This episode goes pretty hard on her, painting her as a rude, entitled woman who's quick to violence when she hears something she doesn't like.
Bro, I heard one time, I don't know if this is South Park, so I'm gonna say this, I'm gonna see if this is what it is. I heard one time she pulled up to a McDonald's and she told the people, I want oatmeal. McDonald's said, we don't serve oatmeal. She said, but I want oatmeal, and they went and got her oatmeal and made it. Now, I don't know if that's true. I don't know if that's a South Park episode I heard, that became a myth. But
it has been reported by people that have worked on movie sets with her that she is so unhappy about her depiction in this episode that she has gone as far as to fire those working on the set who even as much as referenced the episode. Trey Parker has claimed that he once saw Jennifer Lopez at a party where she proceeded to push past him rather aggressively without any acknowledgement. I think it's fair to say that she's close to the top in terms of bad celebrity reactions to South Park.
My name is Jennifer Lopez. I eat tacos y burritos.
Celebrate our differences.
One of the more iconic South Park controversies, some backlash followed the release of the episode All About Mormons, in which the show tackles Mormonism as a whole. The episode pokes fun at the absurdity of the beliefs of the Mormon people and the circumstances that their prophet Joseph Smith created to ensure his message was heard. It's not subtle in its criticism, and at times it can seem a bit harsh, especially as the episode progresses and you begin to realize that the tune playing in the back is actually giving its opinion on the matter.
In America? Really? That sounds kind of...
Dum 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 dum.
In contrast, the episode portrays the Mormon people as incredibly kind and happy people who are able to roll with any of the punches thrown their way. So while the episode is pretty scathing in its satirization of the religion itself, it depicts the people who practice it as a somewhat self-aware and understanding group. This was very much proven in the reception to the episode, as according to Wikipedia, the Church of the Latter-day Saints responded to the episode by first acknowledging that they believed the episode was a gross portrayal of church history, but would go on to say that they believed it, quote, inflicted no perceptible or long-lasting damage to the church. So ironically, even though this episode is considered very controversial, it seems like the Mormons themselves didn't really mind the episode too much. And by doing so, they really proved the episode correct about their ability to take criticism on the chin. The
Hey, have y'all seen the Mormon TikTok moms Hulu? Crazy television.
resilience would once again be shown when Matt and Trey would release their Broadway musical, The Book of Mormon, a few years later, in which the church would respond by saying, quote, the production may attempt to entertain audiences for an evening, but the Book of Mormon as a volume of scripture will change people's lives forever by bringing them closer to Christ.
W response,
They
man.
even went as far
response.
as to buy ads in the show's playbill where they would put things like, you've seen the show, now go read the book. Honestly, I think that's hilarious.
Yo, Mormons might have the best response to.
While season 8
attack
mostly
every-
avoided any serious backlash from the public, season 9 is when the show really began to hit its stride in terms of stirring up controversy. This episode is actually far more controversial today for the reasons you may be thinking. Many would consider this episode to be pretty transphobic in its messages and themes. However, back in 2005, this was an issue that only a small minority of people cared about, therefore it was mostly ignored. However, that doesn't mean the episode avoided controversy at the time, as not too many people were happy about the real sex change footage that was intertwined into the episode's opening minutes. Even worse, it was apparently supposed to last for 5 minutes due to the lack of ideas for the episode, but Comedy Central said no, because of course they did. How are they even allowed to show it? Like, there has to be laws or regulations against it or something, right? And though the alleged transphobia so
Hey, real life. Hold up. We gotta Google that. I don't believe that. Cause listen.
if you're interested in that, you could of this episode with no
It's become a observed holiday annually on November 20th since 2008.
recorded history before. Just ask the Gingers Have Souls kid. He basically exclusively blames this episode for his bullying and harassment. And
wow.
the same with Ed Sheeran, who also blamed this episode for the bullying that he shouldn't be, and misinterpreting the messages. It's really just a product of bad parenting and yada yada, you get it.
Oh, this is Tom
What
Cruise.
is probably the second biggest controversy in the show's history. This one caused lawsuits, cancellations, private investigations, and the departure of one of the show's most beloved characters. This episode heavily criticizes the quote-unquote religion, Scientology, as they portray it as a massive
second
global
biggest.
scam whose sole intentions are to prey on vulnerable people and extract money from them. They also parodied their willingness to sue anyone who speaks negatively about them, and even acknowledges the church's history of getting revenge on those who have wronged them by changing all the names in the credits of the episode to Jane and John Smith. Shockingly, the church wasn't too fond of the episode's portrayal of their religion. They were so unhappy that they conducted a full investigation to try to dig up any negative things they could about Matt Stone and Trey Parker. According to a church whistleblower, they used techniques, quote, comparable to Cold War era CIA and KGB intelligence and propaganda techniques doing things like going through their trash, purchasing their phone records, and going through their bank records. They even went as far as to attempt to hire a film student to get a job at South Park Studios so they could act as a spy in their investigation.
Yeah, we heard that one. We heard that one.
But despite their efforts, they have yet to release anything negative or embarrassing about the creators, so it's safe to assume they were unable to find anything. Then there was the legendary Closet Gate. The episode heavily targets Tom Cruise, who is a known Scientologist. They wanted to joke about the popular belief that Tom Cruise is secretly gay, but they were informed by their lawyers that they could not outright say he was, as Cruise had a history of litigation against those discussing his sexuality. To get around this, they decided to place him in an actual closet for a good portion of the episode, constantly discussing his unwillingness to leave said closet.
Dad, Tom Cruise won't come out of the closet.
Despite this, the actor allegedly still threatened to sue the show, which he never ended up doing. But that was far from the end of the Tom Cruise storyline, as the next year, a scheduled rebroadcast of the episode was suddenly canceled with no warning or explanation given as to why. Several news outlets reported that the parent company of Comedy Central, Viacom, had the episode pulled. Supposedly, this was because Tom Cruise had threatened to cancel his publicity tour for the next Mission Impossible movie if the episode aired. The movie was owned by Paramount, who is also owned by Viacom. There was never any evidence to suggest that this was true, and
has like the Tom Cruise theory been debunked or proven yet before? Tom Cruise, listen, I don't want no smoke, bro. I'm just asking questions. If you have proven your let's just continue.
Tom Cruise would go on record to claim that he hadn't requested to have the episode removed. Reportedly, however, there are several inside sources that maintain that Cruise had the episode pulled. And of course, this didn't sway the opinion of the public, who were outraged by the pulling of the episode. A petition was even created to re-air the episode, garnering 5,000 signatures. And while this is where the controversy ends with the Tom Cruise storyline, the effects of the episode could be seen elsewhere, as it led to the departure of one of the show's most beloved characters.
That's crazy.
Isaac
Quitting
Hayes,
the show because
the voice actor for Chef, was a Scientologist.
Bro, like, you're literally part of a show that's making fun of everybody. Y'all did Mormons, and then Scientology get the aim on them, and now you're tweaking, bro. Like, come on now.
And after the airing of the episode, he reportedly published a statement berating the episode for its parody of the religion and quitting from the show altogether. When this initially happened, Parker and Stone were quick to call him out for the hypocrisy of his exit, discussing how he was fine with poking fun at everyone else, but not himself. Years later, Hayes' son would come out and say that he had never quit the show, and that other Scientologists wrote the statement for him while he was in the hospital after suffering from a stroke. Unfortunately, Hayes passed away 2 years after the episode at the age of 65 due to a stroke. Many have called into question the mysterious circumstances of his death, since he was found next to a treadmill in his home. Many speculate Scientology may have had something to do with this, and I discussed this theory in depth in my South Park Iceberg, so if that interests you, go check it out. One thing that is certain is that this episode undoubtedly caused more real-world consequences than almost any other episode in the series. Notice how I say almost.
Oh, we're about to get to the biggest one. I haven't heard, like, to be honest, like, I remember seeing South Park, like, walking through the house, like, okay, I knew what South Park was, but I didn't really hear, like, the controversy, though.
We'll get to that.
05, I was, what, 11? So, like, oh, man. Bloody Mary.
In this episode, Randy is cured of the horrible disease of alcoholism due to a miracle from a statue of the Virgin Mary. Specifically, he is one of the lucky ones to be covered in the blood being excreted from its... Well, you can see the clip. In a shocking turn of events, the Catholic Church was not too happy about this one. The Catholic League not only demanded an apology from Comedy Central, but also demanded the episode be pulled from air and never released on DVD. The U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops sent a letter to the CEO of Viacom claiming that the network showed, quote, extreme insensitivity by airing the episode. Meanwhile, in New Zealand, the Catholic Bishops' Leader Conference lobbied the network to stop the episodes from being broadcast altogether. They were rejected, and the leading Catholic bishops called for a boycott of the network altogether. The Prime Minister of New Zealand even weighed in, stating that the episode sounded, quote, revolting, but the network was free to air it anyways. One advertiser even withdrew from the network altogether. Despite all of the protests, the episode aired anyways, actually earlier than expected to take advantage of the media surrounding it, and it managed to pull 6 times the amount of normal viewers South Park would get. In Australia, Archbishop
I
Dennis
know
Hart wrote the network asking that
they're
they pull
sick.
the episode. And while the episode was postponed, it did eventually air almost a year later. I've always found it funny that this episode seemed to enrage so many Catholics, as it doesn't even make fun of Catholicism at all, really. It's a commentary on self-control and discipline surrounding alcohol abuse. The whole Virgin Mary thing was just a way to get their point across. It probably stemmed more from the idea of sacredness in religion, since many saw it as a desecration of a sacred figure, but it was really just a
makes
dumb
sense.
joke they used to get their point across.
Cartoon Wars. Well, you know, like I don't think South Park could ever do that, but I know, like in Islam, they're not allowed to show their figure. Okay, from my understanding. Now, South Park did that. Okay, they might be in for a conflict of the ages. Okay.
I will only briefly mention this one as it functions as a precursor to an episode coming up, but the episode planned on showing the Muslim prophet Muhammad as a
It's almost like, hey, South Park, we here, okay? We here. I see the vision. I see what you're doing, man. Tom Cruise, Scientology, Catholic Church. Look, I don't want no smoke, bro. I'm just here. I'm learning, okay? I'm learning.
commentary on the Jyllands Posten Muhammad cartoons controversy. I definitely did not pronounce that right. In which a Danish newspaper published a comic depicting Muhammad. There was widespread protest and even some violence around the world because of this. Comedy Central were initially okay with showing Muhammad, but as part 2 was in production, they decided to censor the scene with Muhammad. Parker and Stone were not happy about this, calling the censorship, quote, wimpy. They were especially upset because South Park had depicted Muhammad years earlier in the episode Super Best Friends with no issues. Since then, all 3 episodes have been banned from TV and pulled from streaming services, with Super Best Friends being pulled long ago and Cartoon Wars being pulled only when the show recently moved to HBO Max.
Oh, it's on HBO Max. Gotta tap in.
A more minor controversy, this one stemmed from the episode's depiction of Steve Irwin. Irwin had died 7 weeks earlier from a freak accident with a stingray, and in the
R.I.P.
episode he can be seen
Crocodile
at Satan's
Dundee.
birthday party with a stingray sticking out of his chest. Many people felt it was simply too soon and that it was done in poor taste. Irwin's wife made a statement discussing her devastation in the show's mocking portrayal of him, and her main worry was that their children may see the episode one day. I obviously understand why people were upset about this, but personally I find it funny that this is what caused controversy, considering the same episode literally featured serial killers Ted Bundy, John Wayne Gacy, and Jeffrey Dahmer doing a Three Stooges routine while being unable to stop themselves from murdering people, but hey, that's just me.
Bro, that's because people really, they don't care, okay? The world, we have done a good job of removing a lot of problems out of people's life. One, self-preservation, okay? How many times a day do you think you really about to die? I went to the zoo today. I could imagine being in the wild with some of those animals, okay? You don't really got to think about that. So now you got to find other problems to worry about.
The irony in this one is that the only real issue people had with this episode was the lack of controversy. The episode tackles the implications that the N-word has on society. It does a great job in doing this, and if you want to hear me dive deeper into it, then you can go check out my first video on this channel. The episode contains 43 uncensored uses of the N-word, and yet this episode actually received positive feedback from civil rights organizations like the NAACP, who praised the episode for accurately depicting other races' perceptions of how black people feel when hearing the word. The only person that seemed to be upset was the founder of the Parents Television Council, L. Brent Bozell, who issued a statement criticizing the lack of protest, comparing it to the outrage radio host Don Imus received for his statements. Severe misunderstanding of context aside, I'm sure he still got the point of the episode, that non-black people have a lack of understanding of how it feels to hear that word used, and that it's not really their place to make these kind of statements, as well as just how hilariously ironic it would be for a white person to make a statement like this. So let's go ahead and check and take a look at what this man looks like. Surely he wouldn't. Oh, well,
Exactly.
I think that tells us everything we need to know.
Man looked like the leader of the Thundercats. What was his name?
This one was pretty minor as well. This episode features some pretty graphic and violent depictions of an assault on Indiana Jones, and obviously there were a lot of people that were upset about this. An insider even claimed that while Paramount had no plan to protest the episode, they were not big fans and, quote, wanted it to go away. You all probably know my opinion of this episode by now. I think that what they were trying to do is a funny idea. I just think the execution was a little overboard. They definitely didn't have to take it as far as they did, but
Whoa!
hey, this is South Park we're talking about. No one crosses the line quite like them, so while I'm not a fan of this episode, I can still respect it for the risks being taken.
I feel like I heard of Pinewood Derby.
This one pokes fun at the leaders of nations all across the world, but it would seem that Mexico's president Felipe Calderón didn't take it as well as the other leaders. The episode was pulled from MTV Mexico, with the network claiming that they couldn't get permissions to use the Mexican flag in time. Though Mexican fans of South Park were skeptical of this and cried censorship. The episode was eventually rebroadcasted in Mexico, but only after permission from the Ministry of Interior, so it's pretty safe to say that they probably pulled the episode. We have finally reached South Park's magnum opus in terms of controversy. Not only is this the South Park episode that stirred up more real-world controversy than any other, an argument can be made for it being one of the most controversial episodes of any television show ever.
Oh, wow.
To celebrate the 200th episode, Matt and Trey decided to go back and basically reignite every single controversy they've ever had. From Tom Cruise to Jennifer Lopez, almost all of their celebrity digs were back on full display. But of course they had to go back and visit one of their largest controversies, the depiction of the Muslim prophet Muhammad. In part 1, there are heavy implications that Muhammad would be shown in next week's episode. After part 1 was released, radical Muslim group Revolution Muslim heavily implied that if Muhammad was shown, there would be action taken against both Matt and Trey and Comedy Central. They included references to Dutch filmmaker Theo van Gogh, who was assassinated by a radical Muslim after publishing books criticizing Islam.
Yo, imagine making a cartoon and they're like, all right, listen. You see what happened to John F. Kennedy, all right? That's all I'm saying. Put that drop top down on that Ford if you want, all right? That's all we're saying. Yo, I'm gonna be honest. I don't. Somebody say that to me, I'm not making it.
Matt and Trey seemed pretty unfazed by this, as it was their belief that giving into these threats would be not only hypocritical, since the entire premise of the episode is defending free speech and condemning terrorism, but they would also be allowing terrorism to work and creating a slippery slope for censorship of free speech. The same could not be said about Comedy Central, who were more than willing to give in to the demands of this group. Because of this, when the episode aired, every single use of the name Muhammad was censored, every appearance of Muhammad himself was censored, and Kyle's entire speech at the end of the episode discussing the effectiveness of terrorism was completely censored. And if that wasn't enough, not only were both episodes pulled from ever being rebroadcasted again, they were removed from South Park's website, every streaming service that the show is on, and every DVD set of the show except for the Region 1 release of the 14th season. This brings the total of banned South Park episodes to 5, along with the previously mentioned Cartoon Wars and Super Best Friends. Though the episodes have been practically wiped off the face of the earth in terms of legal methods of watching it, it can still be found re-uploaded on the internet. It just takes a bit of searching. Years after release, a 4chan user was also able to find a partially uncensored version of the episode through a glitch in the South Park Studios website, and for the first time we knew what Kyle said in his speech. Again, I talk about this in my South Park Iceberg video, or you can find the full clip floating around pretty easily if you're interested, but yeah, you can check that out if you want. Despite the threats and the situation becoming a national news story, no violence or action was ever taken against Matt and Trey or anyone at Comedy Central. Obviously, Matt and Trey were very unhappy with the censorship, but despite this, they're still with Comedy Central, and occasionally will reference the situation in interviews or through the show. They've even been able to sneak in a shot or two of Muhammad without Comedy Central noticing. A controversy as big as the last one is a pretty tough act to follow in terms of generating controversy, and because of that, it would be nearly 14 years before South Park would generate another truly noteworthy controversy. This would come not in the...
What is that skeleton doing in the back?
form of an episode of the show, but rather with the release of their new video game, South Park: The Stick of Truth. I discussed this topic in great detail again on my iceberg, so I recommend you check it out, but the short version is this. Europe and Australia have been known to be a lot stricter on what can be shown in their media, so because of this, Ubisoft decided to censor certain parts of the game that they assumed would cause problems in those regions. Censored scenes include alien probing, performing abortions, and some special censoring in Germany, where certain imagery is illegal. They replaced the censored content with this mocking splash screen, and that was that.
That's crazy.
It wouldn't be until season 23 that the show would have another noteworthy controversy. I was going to talk about the Netherlands pulling the season 19 episode sponsored content due to Garrison's comments on Syrian refugees, as well as the show's half apology to Al Gore in season 22 after ridiculing climate change in the past, but those seem pretty minor to me, so I figured I would just mention them here. But anyways, remember how I mentioned that it wouldn't be the last time South Park would be accused of transphobia? Well, here we are. In Boor Girls, Strong Woman competes in a Strong Woman competition as a heavy favorite for first place. That is until she meets one of her competition, Heather Swanson, who is a trans woman. She's modeled in the image of Macho Man Randy Savage, along with the trademark style of speaking, and she absolutely destroys the competition with no issue. After this was released, the absolute cesspool known as Twitter broke into a fit of rage. Not saying it's a cesspool because of this, I'm just saying it is in general because that website sucks. Many people were horrified by the show's depiction of trans athletes, and many even called for its cancellation. It was labeled transphobic by countless reviewers and journalists, as many discussed the implications of the episode and the effects it could have on trans people. Obviously, nothing ever came of any of this besides the hate mob, but the situation does raise an interesting question about the show's attitude towards trans people. To go off on a bit of a tangent, I would like to give my own opinion. Personally, as someone who is unqualified to speak on this topic, being both not female and not transgender, I don't believe that this episode is transphobic. In reality, the episode contains very little commentary on trans athletes because Heather Swanson isn't really meant to represent trans athletes. It's revealed throughout the episode that she is Strong Woman's ex-boyfriend, who transitioned solely to get revenge on her because he felt like she had beaten him by breaking up with him. This insecurity of losing to a girl is what drives him to do this. In reality, Heather Swanson is more of a representation of these male insecurities than a commentary on trans athletes. This is mostly confirmed by the subplot in which Cartman feels the same way after losing to the girls in their board game club, going as far as to lobby to have girls not allowed in the club. I personally read the commentary on trans athletes as pretty insignificant, basically presenting both sides through the Cartman plot.
That's what I heard they said about archery and like some other Olympic games. They were basically like, there's no reason to split those in a competition. Like a woman archer should be able to go up against a male archer. But I think there was like 1 year a woman archery person beat the men. Like she came in first, and like everybody else in the ranking was men except she was number one. Then they split it after that or something. I don't know if that's what South Park is talking about, but some good commentary right there.
The Strong Woman plot, and closing without ever really making a point on the issue besides this is a controversial topic. That's just my opinion on it. Maybe I completely misread it and it really was meant to be taken at face value, but I'd be interested to know what you guys think about it, whether you think it's transphobic, and whether you think the show as a whole is transphobic. So go ahead and let me know in the comments. Well, we have finally reached the most recent major South Park controversy. Technically, Boor Girls came out after this episode, but I wanted this one to be last. Anyways, this
wonder what happens like if you fly to China with like a South Park t-shirt. They look through your bag and find it.
Has experienced
Me personally, I'm not trying it, but
in its 25 years. I hope I did a good job. I hope you guys liked it. I may have missed a few smaller ones, so if you can think of any, feel free to let me know. But yeah, that is it. Are there any questions?
no. Backrooms.
Sir, this is a Wendy's.
Bruh, this is what I used to do after all my streams, bruh. All my late nights, I used to head straight to the fast food. Bruh, I was even eating crystals, okay? Give me the crystal chicken, three count with a large fry, strawberry Fanta. Come on now.
Oh, I must have forgotten.
I had a naked chalupa once, boy. I was bent over that toilet. It was a bad day.
To take my meds.
Nah, this was a banger. All right. Now that I understand South Park's storytelling a little bit, it's really intrigued me to get into it. Okay. So, me and my girlfriend, we've been binging things. We watched like Law Abiding Citizen. We watched The Expendables. South Park might need to be one of them things we throw on, like nostalgia, old day is crazy because this was like 10 years ago. Well, some of the stuff we've been watching, but we might need to tap into South Park. All right. I think it got some good commentaries, that can spark pretty decent conversation. But listen, y'all let me know how y'all feel about this down below. Make sure y'all like, comment, subscribe, all that great stuff. And until the next time I see y'all, peace.
So when the metal hit his mug, he just sunk in place. 100K Holla, chillin' Bahamas. Come home to your crib and throw in your mama.